Hi, and welcome to the She's a Christian podcast. I'm your host, Louise, and this podcast is going to be brought to you every single week. If you're a Christian and you're looking for some great community, then we hope that this podcast makes you feel like you've nipped round to your pal's house for a cup of tea and a chinwag, and that you go away feeling even more excited and more aware of God's goodness, His love for you and His protection over you. If you aren't a Christian, or you know some Christians but they're a bit weird, maybe you're not even sure that God exists, maybe you're seeking, then this is a great place for you too. Come along, tune in, and we hope that you go away feeling encouraged and uplifted, hearing testimonies of goodness from people from all walks of life. Tune in, I don't really know what I'm doing, but does anyone? And let's do this together. Hi everyone, welcome on to season 1, episode 3, and this week I am with Jane Ferguson. So Jane and I know each other from church, and I'm really excited to chat to her this week, and I know that this will be an absolutely brilliant episode, so sit back and enjoy wherever you're tuning into this. So just to give you a little bit of background on Jane, as I mentioned, I know Jane from church, but she's actually from Liverpool, although living in Perth now. Jane has 3 kids, so she's got Beth, Laura and Thomas. So Beth is 20, Laura is 18, Thomas is 16. She's got 2 cats who are 3 and a spaniel who is 9. Jane is really involved in our church with the Recovery Café, which is a phenomenal program. And I asked her, what's your main role at the Recovery Café? And she said, my main role is turning up every single week. And that consistency with the people that go along there is so important. So as well as turning up every week, Jane does do a ton of stuff behind the scenes to ensure that this can happen. And not just providing community for the people that come along, but also being the middleman for making sure that they get filtered into any local programs or, rehabilitation that can really aid their recovery. I asked Jane what she would do with her day if money was of no object whatsoever. And here's what she said. She said she would visit her family in Shropshire, study theology, and explore successful rehabilitation options for people, and probably start one herself in Perth. So that gives you a little flavour of who Jane is. She's passionate about people and helping people, and that really comes across whenever you meet her. So I have the pleasure of seeing Jane every single week at church, and I'm excited for my listeners to get to know a little bit about Jane, and I'm sure by the end of this recording, Jane will be your friend as well. So Jane, thank you so much for coming onto my podcast. I will just tell everyone a funny story. I wrote you a Facebook private mail, this long-winded kind of ask, like, will you do me a favor? And I was really selling the idea of, like, please come on to my podcast. And it was quite a wordy ask. And you wrote back and said, I've not read what you said, but yes, that's fine. I'll do it. It's like, Jane, this is a very dangerous way to navigate your life. I actually think I said something like, Jane, I won't actually repeat what I said, but I said something inappropriate. And I said, I can wait and asking you to do anything. So thank you so much for trusting me and popping on the podcast, particularly because we're only 3 episodes in, and it's really not, it's still in its infancy, and it's just getting started. And the reason I wanted you to come on is you can chat away to anyone and everyone. And that is something that is such a gift for getting on a podcast, because I don't want someone at the start who's going to freeze, because I have absolutely no idea really how to host a podcast or anything like that. So my whole plan is get people on the podcast that are far, far better than me at chatting and all the rest of it. And that person is you.
Thank you very much.
Have you got any of your animals cuddled in beside you right now?
I've got Tess just next to me. One of our cats is just outside at the moment, waiting for the other cat to show up. So she won't come in until the other cat comes in too. So she likes to know we're all in together.
Is she head honcho and she's like making sure everyone's okay?
No, she's just fat and lazy, and she doesn't go out very much. She just sits outside the door and waits for the other cat to come back from her adventures. And then she's like, no, I'm coming in. But I think it's to try and fool me, to make me think that she's been out on adventures too. But she's literally, I can see where she is now. Yeah.
So do you think she's like, hey, tell me all about your adventure, like tell me what it's like, and like lives vicariously through the non-lazy one?
Well, I don't know. I don't know whether she's actually that bothered, really. I think she just likes the company, but I don't think she's the type who's interested in anyone except herself.
Oh gosh, that is so funny. I feel like I need to come over and meet these hilarious animals. I love that you've got them all figured out. So tell everyone a little bit about yourself, because I started this podcast to talk to Christians and really demystify these people that roam the earth that call themselves Christians and show people that are just normal people that are just like anyone else, but we
Yeah.
we follow Jesus and we know Jesus. Can you please tell us a wee bit about how you became a Christian and when?
I became a Christian when I was 18, and I'd got myself in a lot of trouble, or at least I felt I had, and I felt like I was a real mess. And I sat on my back doorstep of my parents' house and just said, God, if you're out there, you need to show me. You need to show me where you are. And bizarrely, I didn't realize it at the time it was an answer to prayer. But bizarrely, that evening, a friend came round and told me about Jesus. And on the inside, I was cringing. I was like, this is weird. This is really weird. And the way you're talking about Jesus is just a bit over the top. But I knew because I prayed that this was God answering. So I said a very basic prayer, just, Lord, I'm sorry for messing up. I believe in you. Can you come into my life? Can you please change me, sort me out? Amen. And that was it. That was the start of a life as a Christian.
Had you been, as a child, taken on to church or went to Sunday school or anything like that?
Yeah, I was brought up as a Catholic. My mum was a committed Catholic. My dad, I don't know really, he didn't go to church. He did when he was a kid, but he didn't when he was older. And I remember him really not being impressed with the Catholic faith, but really the only experience he had of it was through my mum. And my mum had a hard time with one thing or another with the church. But I went to church with her, and she believed that the Catholic Church was the one true faith. And what I realized is that people can be Christians as Catholics or Protestants or whatever, absolutely. But there's only one true God. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the difference.
So when you sat on your doorstep, were you kind of like, it wasn't a completely foreign abstract idea that there was a God? Were you kind of like, okay, like let's give this avenue a bash then?
Yeah, pretty much. I could not help myself. Mm-hmm. I was just sort of out of my depth with all the things that were going on in my mind. Mm-hmm. And I thought I need to find something quick. And the first thing that came to mind was maybe God is real. Maybe he can help me. But mm-hmm. I wasn't, even as being brought up as a Catholic, I'd never, ever spoke to God properly.
Yeah.
It's only been through repeated prayers and through the format of the Catholic Mass. I'd never really prayed properly myself.
Yeah.
From the heart.
And what happened after that? Did you, like that Sunday, go to church, or was it something that you were just navigating yourself for a while?
The next day, I went to bed straight away. Yeah. And the next day, I woke up absolutely sobbing, just sobbing, and like talking to God about absolutely all sorts. And I phoned my friend who had spoken to me, and I said, I'm in a mess. I don't know what to do. I know I'm a Christian, but I don't know what next. And he was about to go away, but he had a whole network of people. And he arranged for them, like one by one, to sort of come around and chat to me, talk to me about how to find a church, what to do, and all of that type of thing. And it was a real big deal because my mum, being such a committed Catholic, would have been gutted if I'd left the Catholic Church. Yeah. So I would go to the Catholic Church in the morning and any church I could in the evening. Okay. And I sort of explored a lot, but I ended up just with my local church because I didn't have to get a bus. Yeah. I could just walk to my local church, and it was a little Church of England. Mm-hmm. And I was like, right, I'm here to stay. So, yeah.
Oh my goodness. And what was I going to say? So you were in Liverpool. How old are you at this point? Were you a teenager or young adult?
18, maybe 17, actually, going on 18, because right, okay. I was still in school. I was in sixth form at an all-girls Catholic convent school.
Oh gosh, okay. So you're still very much kind of like, under the tenure of your mum. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, the family house and things like that. So you were sneaking off to church.
I was sneaking off to church, and the bizarre thing is that my brother would like quite often go out with his mates and have a drink and stuff, and he would never get told off. I would go to house group and they would go absolutely nuts. My parents thinking I'd been whisked into some sort of cult, and I was back by 10 o'clock, and it was like, come on.
Oh my
I'm
God.
studying the Bible.
Did the nuns find out?
Yes, I was in an RE class and I asked too many questions, basically,
Okay.
because I was really trying to find out where Jesus was. And
Yeah.
the Catholic faith is there, but I still had loads of questions.
Yeah.
And the deputy head spoke with me and she said, Jane, we have had girls removed and sent to other schools if they changed the faith, and you wouldn't want to do that right in the middle of your A levels, would you? And I was like, no.
Gosh. It's just funny that there's such a big spectrum. So my wee boy goes to a Catholic school. And
Yeah,
one of the reasons I sent him there is it's a decidedly Christian school. The head teacher, the deputy head, I believe she's a born again, like she's born again.
yeah,
They very much talk about Jesus. They talk about gospel
yeah,
living, but it could so very go. It could go the other way, like what you
yeah,
experienced, couldn't it?
yeah,
So
definitely.
my only experience of Catholic schools has been these like beautiful communities that are so focused on Jesus and want to
Yeah,
nurture the message of the gospel. But I can imagine that for you at that school, had you not just maybe stuck your head down and got on with your A levels, or had you been a first year,
yeah,
could have been panned out a wee bit differently.
yeah, we might have
You
done.
weren't kicked out. No, we're allowed to stay.
Oh yeah, I was allowed to, well, I was allowed to stay if I didn't ask any more questions.
They're like, listen, and Jane, you shut your mouth, you can stay.
Yeah, that was pretty much it, yeah.
So what do you, from an outsider's point of view, do you
Yeah.
think, in fact, you're the perfect person to ask this question to because of where you volunteer, where you spend your time and energy. What do you think some of the preconceived ideas are that people have about Christianity that you've witnessed firsthand?
There's, gosh, there's such a wide spectrum of views. It's weird. It's out of date. People who go to church are religious. They dress in a particular way. They're in a particular lifestyle. You wouldn't necessarily get people who are poor going to church or who are struggling with addictions. It's serious. It's really serious, as how some people think it. A lot of people say to me, "I could never go to church after what I've done," and just feel that they have to be at a certain level of perfection before they're allowed to walk into church. Lots of jokes about I would be lightning fodder if I walked in. I'd be struck down and I'd go into balls of flames. And I've promised them that I've walked in and that's not happened, and I'm no less perfect than they are. So, but yeah, there are a lot of the preconceptions. Yeah,
Yeah. And I think a lot of people think church, well, I'd say most people think church is a museum for good people, when that's so far from the case. And if you think about in the Bible who Jesus reserved his most disdain and his anger for, it was the religious Pharisees, right? It was the
yeah,
people walking about with that elevated sense of goodness and righteousness that they
yeah,
believed was theirs, that they'd earned themselves, right? I think that mindset, as you say, is still the blueprint which a lot of people see church through today, whether it's people they've met or whether it's
yeah.
just their own filter, right? That they see church through. And do you think that you get the opportunity on a Wednesday when you see some people that are perhaps unchurched, have never been in church, that you think, you're seeing them as addicts or recovering, and you're thinking in your head, there is an answer to this. There's something that can break these chains. How much do you feel at liberty to actually say that, or do you feel like you want to kind of be a step back?
I feel at liberty to do it, but I don't think it's respectful to a person as soon as they walk in, regardless of what situation they're in, to say, "Hey, I believe in Jesus. He can sort out all your problems. And by the way, if you just pray now and get down on your knees and confess your sins and blah blah blah, you're going to be sorted for the rest of your life." I think it's important to get to know the person.
Mm.
I think it's important to love the person, to, even when sometimes you're wondering, how can I love this person? Ask God, how can I love? Give me this, your love. for this person, and building up a relationship. And through building up a relationship, and like I said before, being there every week, it makes it very easy to talk about Jesus. And sometimes just say, look, I know this isn't working for you. You've told me yourself methadone's not helping, and all of these things and all of these situations. Would you mind if I prayed for you? Would you consider maybe coming to church? You know, we've got an Alpha course running at the moment, which is like a course in exploring Christianity. You don't even have to become a Christian or believe in anything when you go. But we have a table full of people from a Recovery Café coming to Alpha every Sunday, and it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
Oh, and can you tell us a bit more about the Recovery Cafe? Like, where does it take place? What's the format? Who comes along? Like, any stories that you think would just be brilliant to share and, great for people to be aware of?
Okay, right. The Recovery Cafe, it's been going on in the church for a long time under the name of The Ark, way before I joined. And it was basically providing an open door to come in, get some food, get some soup, possibly get some clothes and some things to take away with you. And just a safe space that was a place where they could be listened to. That was the main aim. And now I would say that is still the main aim, to be a safe space where people can be listened to. But also our heart is very much to see people get better. So on a Wednesday, a typical format would be to welcome people as they come in, have tea and coffee ready for them, pretty much like you're inviting someone into your house. You know, do you want a cuppa? What do you want? What can I get you? Type of thing, and making people feel welcome, serving food, and then sitting amongst all the different people, enjoying food with them, which I think is important too. I think when you're sitting around the table together, it's a great leveler, rather than being patronizing and, can I get you some soup, you poor thing, type of thing. It's like, I'm about to have my meal with you, and I am with you through this journey. There are loads, oh gosh, there are so many stories to share. There's one guy who comes in, and I quite often say a little prayer at the beginning, and he runs into the kitchen afterwards and says, right, can we all pray together? And he wants us all to hold hands and pray with him. There are people now that I've learned through them coming to Alpha that they have gone to church when they were younger. Some of them went to Sunday school to escape the situations they were in. One of the things I've discovered are that very few people actually purposely chose the life that's happening now. It was almost like they were off to a non-star. So, parents are alcoholics too, or drug addicts too. And they've been neglected. They haven't had family around them. And a temptation that involves some sort of escape has been very, very strong. And I think, when I listen to these stories, I think, well, I've been tempted to escape sometimes, not necessarily through drugs and alcohol, but there are times when I've said to God, I wish I could just fall off the face of this earth. There are often times in desperation that we need something else to help us. And really that's what becomes very, very clear to me. I can't think of any stories off the top of my head, but if they come, I'll come back to them.
What do you think are some preconceived ideas that people have about addicts?
That they're dangerous, they're going to steal, they smell, you can't get any common sense out of them. It was their choice, and therefore they deserve the consequences. Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah. And what would people be surprised to hear about addicts?
That they are people.
Yeah.
And the only difference between me and them is that they're a little bit more broken at the moment than I am.
Yeah. Oh, you're the perfect person for this role, Jane. And I just wish people could see everything that goes on behind the scenes, and the interest that you take in the minutiae of people's lives. And I remember you telling me that you were on a mission to replace someone's coffee cup because their lid was broken, it was sellotaped on. And that to them was so important. So you were you were interested in the fact this person's coffee cup wasn't in a, wasn't working properly. And when it's cold, that's a big deal. You were interested in that, and you made it your mission to to head off and ensure that that situation was rectified. Yeah, I just find that so important and so amazing. And I'm
Mhm.
sure that whilst it's hard work every Wednesday, and you run another community cafe as well, I'm sure that is very fulfilling.
Oh, it's the highlight of my week.
Yeah.
It's absolutely the highlight of my week. I love it. I love that we have a God that sees what our strengths and abilities are
Mm-hmm.
and finds something so perfect for us.
Oh, totally.
It's just amazing, and often I feel way more blessed
Mm-hmm.
and encouraged than what I feel I'm giving out.
Yeah. And you've got all these new friends now that come along to the Recovery Cafe that I'm sure you just love to
Yeah,
see every week.
yeah, I definitely do. And we miss people. If
Yeah.
they miss a week, we're worried about them and, what are they up to and things. And
Yeah.
quite often, they've just been watching the football game or something like that. But we imagine all sorts and tell
Yeah.
them off the next week for not letting us know.
Yeah. It must be really worrying, you know?
Yeah,
Must be
yeah,
like having a lot of people to worry about, particularly the ones that are more vulnerable from week to week. But how amazing
yeah,
for them to have someone that notices that they're not in the room.
yeah.
And yeah, it's just it's wonderful what goes on there. Um, Back to you.
Hmm.
Or you can use the Recovery Cafe, the art, as an example. But have there been any times in your life where you have absolutely, felt this tangible, oh, good grief, like Jesus is underpinning me right now in this entire situation, or moved miracles in your life? Has there been anything you've ever faced like that?
I've got a number of examples. The first example was after I became a Christian. I could not imagine my mum ever leaving the Catholic
Mm-hmm.
faith, and I couldn't imagine my dad ever being interested
Mm-hmm.
in anything to do with God. And over months, I prayed for them and cried about it and stuff because they really didn't understand me. And I know it's a typical teenage thing to go, I'm just not understood. My parents don't understand me. But they were really totally freaked out
Mm-hmm.
by my faith.
Okay.
And I started inviting friends round, and we'd go upstairs to my bedroom for a prayer time, and they'd be like, this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. And I just thought, I just can't see it. But I remember reading in the Bible. I was new to reading the Bible, but faith can move mountains. And I was like, right, well, my dad is my mountain, if you like. And I prayed for him and cried so much. And my dad was very strict. And I was helping out on a short-term mission on a ship called Logos 2 that was docked in Liverpool. And it was a chance for young Christians to go and help and volunteer and sort of get involved in the missionary world. And I absolutely loved it. But one night I was really late home and I was panicking. I thought my dad's going to go absolutely nuts about me being late. And as I ran home, my bag burst and I had a little Bible that fell out, my comb, my purse, everything. And it was dark, I couldn't see, but I managed to get my purse, pretty much nothing else. And it was just a prayer that just came to my head. I was like, Lord, whoever picks up that Bible, I pray they will read it. Now, my dad had asked me on a number of occasions what had I been reading in the Bible. And because I was panicking, it came out absolutely nonsense. I just couldn't explain to him what I'd been reading in one straight sentence. And my dad didn't tell me off when I got in. He didn't even notice I was home, which was like amazing. And the next morning when I got up, my dad couldn't sleep and he'd been on an early morning walk and he had found my Bible. And the first thing he said to me was, Jane, you have no idea what the Bible says. You told me this says this and it doesn't. It says this. And I was like, I knew it's what I was trying to tell you in the first place. And that was the start of it, really. And my granddad, my dad's mum, and my dad just turned to God really a little bit more, not immediately. And then one morning he phoned me and he said, Jane, I was driving to work and I just sensed God. And I don't know much about the Holy Spirit, but I felt it was the Holy Spirit. And he was in tears, really. And he just started telling me that was that. And he became a Christian. My mum went nuts again
Your poor mother.
because my dad was like, we could kind of tell what mood he was in and things like that. We could predict him. And suddenly, now that he was becoming a Christian, he was unpredictable. And my mum felt it was fake. And because he'd had a number of hobbies before, fishing, badminton, and all these different things, she was like, it's become another hobby. And it really wasn't another hobby for my dad. And bit by bit, again, my mum sort of softened, and I got ill. I struggled with depression and had been ill for a little while. And my mum asked my friends to pray for me. And they said, well, why don't you come and pray with us? And we all pray together. And in my mum praying with them, she became a Christian too. So that was the first time really I saw absolute miracles, because they just seemed so far removed from what I thought they would ever be. And now they are strong Christians, and it is such a blessing. The next time I was extremely ill in hospital with depression, and I was going through a divorce at the time, not a divorce that I wanted. And I felt that all of my security, everything I ever knew, had been taken away from me. I didn't know whether I'd have a home to live in. I didn't know how that would work out. I didn't know how often I'd see my kids. I'd been a full-time mum and love being a full-time mum. I just wanted to be with my kids the whole time. I didn't know how I was going to afford life. I wasn't working, and I certainly didn't feel well enough to work, and just a number of things really. And also, as a Christian, I'd been married to my husband for 17 years, and we had 3 kids. And just sitting on a row in church was our life every Sunday. We would sit on the second to front row. That was where we sat, and it was like, what's going to happen now? What now? And I just didn't know. And I was so ill that there were times when I had to be heavily sedated. And on one of those times, I was being pinned down by maybe 4 members of staff. I'm not sure. My adrenaline was so high that I was nearly forcing people off me. So they needed to hold me down, to inject me with some strong stuff. And I actually cried out in front of them, God, where are you? Where are you? Where are you now? And I really feel I heard his voice. And I've said it before to people that his voice, it wasn't like I was hearing voices. It wasn't that type of illness. It felt like a whisper, and yet stronger than a loud noise. It just went straight to my heart, really. And it was just, be still and know that I'm God. And I didn't get it, and I didn't have a chance to get it. I was knocked out. That was me knocked out for like 24 hours or something. But when I came round, I remembered, and I thought, right, I've been a Christian here for 20, 30 years. This is where it counts. So I thought, right, if God has said, be still and know that he is God, he is basically telling me not to panic, not to worry, to literally worry about what is in one day at a time, and not even worry about that, because he's got that sorted. And I had to put what faith I had left into practice, and God honoured that. You really honoured that.
Oh, that's amazing, Jane. I remember you standing up and sharing that in church. And that was quite a few years ago now, because my Nana was alive, and I know you loved my Nana.
Yeah.
And that's what made me like you so much. I didn't even know you, but I remember thinking, she loves my Nana. Like she must be like such a good egg, like my Nana. And then you stood up in church and you shared that story, and I just remember thinking, why does everyone not do this? Do you know what I mean? Like just get up and share something like really honest, and you weren't embarrassed. You actually didn't give 2 hoots. You were just
Absolutely not.
This is what's happened. Like what are you going to do about it? Like, this is what Jesus has done. And the story wasn't even about you in a good way. Do you know? I remember thinking, oh my goodness, if everyone was just a Jane Ferguson, the world, the church would, the things we'd be able to do inside the church would change the world. And I think maybe that's something that's come out of that terrible time for you, is that ability that like you actually don't give 2 hoots what anyone thinks, in like the best way. Like, you're just so honest, and everything you say always just points back to Jesus. Like, look what he did for me, look what he did for me, look what he did for me. And I think that's just it's just amazing. And I just have goosebumps even like listening to your story, even though it's quite harrowing to listen to, and obviously imagine what that must have been like for you and for your family and for, you know, everyone
Mm.
involved. And thank the Lord, you know, you came out the other side of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing though is that, you know, I wasn't like this beforehand. Becoming the Christian I am has been a process, and it will continue to be a process. We are not perfect, are we? And we're on a journey. We're on a journey. And I think if you come to a point where you think you've got it all sorted, it's probably a time to have a good long talk with yourself. But in hospital, I really did have nothing. Like, there wasn't even a chair in my room in case I threw it or something. So, and so I sat on the floor a lot of the time, and I had all my belongings taken away from me as well, just so, you know, I didn't cause any damage at all. And I just everything was stripped away. And in everything being stripped away, I thought, what else, basically? You know, I was so sort of at the bottom of the heap as far as I was concerned, that afterwards everything was a bonus.
Yeah.
So getting my sanity back, um, being given like the smallest amounts of responsibility here and there, it was just like, right, I've lost everything. I've got nothing left to prove. Some people have seen me at my very, very worst. So what? You know, you've got to get on with it, really. And if people judge me as an absolute lunatic, it doesn't matter. You know, if they think that I'm mentally weak, yeah, I am actually.
Yeah.
You know, but it doesn't stop me being who I am. You know, and I've just got nothing left to prove anymore. So
Did you
it's
have
a good place
visitors?
to. I had loads of visitors. I wasn't allowed at first because I was too ill. My mum and dad came up from Shropshire. They're in their 70s, and they came up from Shropshire sometimes just for 24 hours, just to see me and then go back again. And then I was in a boot camp, a fitness boot camp in Perth, which was brilliant. And I had loads of friends from there. And being in boot camp, it was a bit like being on maternity ward. Because, you know, when you've had like loads of pain and you're back on the maternity ward with your baby, and then you see a woman come with like a hair stuck to her head
And you're
and
like,
everything. And you're like, you poor woman, and you totally get it. Well, doing boot camp and doing like crunches and press ups and things in all elements of the weather, it was like, you know, we would all make painful noises and we would all just sort of bond over the pain, really. So I had like still have them, amazing friends. None of them go to church at all, but they would come up and they would buy me like little Marks and Spencer's picnics and stuff like that. Somebody came and lent me a tweezers to do my eyebrows because I'd become like a muppet and stuff. And oh, there were just loads of things they did, and they made loads of jokes, like absolutely loads of jokes about me being a mentally ill patient, and treated me accordingly, like, but in such a humorous way. And sometimes when the nurses would come in to sort of kick them out, they said, "You've got to work which one needs to stay, and you choose which one of us would you like to stay," because we're all there. And they came around me. They absolutely came around me. And then I've got another friend who, oh my goodness, she just had my back. She just totally had my back, and she stuck with me right the way through. And I'd bought Christmas presents online for my kids. So it's pretty much the only way I could do it. And she went away and wrapped them all for my kids. And oh, she's just amazing. And then I had another friend who would come in and she'd do all my laundry. And in a way, I mean, I don't wish that I was ill again, but I do wish she would do my laundry because she did it so well, and it was also neatly ironed and folded in a way I've never seen before. It was like material origami, and I was like, this woman is amazing, and she stuck with me as well. And you know, a few people from the church that I was going to came, and just every visit I had actually was significant. It was significant, and quite often my friends from church would be there when my friends who weren't in church there, and I think it was good for all of us to realize that we're all normal. So
totally. Oh, completely. And do you remember a time once you got out of hospital where, or even when you were in it, where you felt this flash of, oh, that's the old me back again? Like this almost like a glimmer of like the clouds are parting.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think when I came back from hospital, I mean, I have been in for 8 months, and it was a real adjustment to come back, and it was more of an adjustment to come back and not have my husband in my house,
Yeah.
and not have my kids all the time. And I was crying, but I had this hope in me. I had this
Mhm.
reassurance that God was really real, and I'd seen
Mhm.
him on so many occasions provide for me
Mhm.
just at the right time and give me wisdom. I mean, I'm not a bright spark, and he gave me wisdom that was way beyond mine on how to deal with things that I
Mhm.
never wanted to deal with, how to deal with the response to a divorce and all of the
Mhm.
paperwork that goes with that and communication with solicitors. He gave me just ability, more than common sense,
Mhm.
to say what was what and
Mhm.
to work things out. Yeah.
Mhm. I think as well what you were saying, your humor's so self-deprecating, but when you're saying you didn't have the wisdom, I guess
Yeah.
the one great thing about that is had you been someone that had that elevated sense of thinking they knew all their answers, there wouldn't have been the space for God to move because you
Yeah.
wouldn't have been able to hear him. But because you
Yeah.
felt like at that point you had nothing to bring to the table through your own strength,
Mhm.
then what you invited into your life was a supernatural strength that
Yeah.
took care
Yeah.
of you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And you allowed God to move and you allowed God to work because
Hmm.
you were resting in his finished
Hmm.
work, right?
Yeah.
And it's amazing to see how he moved and hear how he moved. And I didn't know you then. I only know you now post that story.
Hmm.
Do you look back and think that is it easy for you now to see that God had it all figured out, or is there still elements where you think I'll have to get to heaven before I understand that part of the puzzle?
I think there's a reality, and it's the same with the people who are struggling with addiction. But when you give your life to Jesus and you're an addict, you actually are still an addict. Things don't sort of sort out overnight. And similarly, when I sort of handed everything back to God and said, right, I know you're totally in control, it didn't take the hurt away of going through a divorce. I was never embarrassed about my mental health. That couldn't have helped it anyway. I was never embarrassed about that, but I was very self-conscious about being on my own again. And even going to church and not having my family next to me, I wasn't used to that at all. So there were like little moments now and again where I'd have a wobble. And you know what? There still is. And I still sometimes struggle with depression and things, but I do know that God has never left me. And just recently, even, I was freaking out about getting ill because I had like a couple of weeks of just being really, really down. And one of my biggest fears was going back into hospital again. And yet in the Bible, it says, don't be anxious. Don't be anxious about anything. It was like, I'm anxious. I'm absolutely anxious. And I went to the pastor of our church in Wales, and I just said, look, I'm a mess and I am petrified of going back into hospital. Now, Ian's had cancer before. He's had stage 3 cancer, and he is not living in fear about ever getting it again. He's totally free from that. So it's like, I want what you've got. And as I was praying with him, I realized I got a picture again of when I was back in hospital on possibly my very worst day. And I was aware that God was with me. And it's like, even then, when I was like that, if God was with me then, he's with me now. God doesn't change. He does not change. Our moods change. Oh my goodness, do my moods change, especially going through the menopause. God does not change. He is faithful. He sticks with us. He is more consistent than I'll ever be. And that is just such good knowledge to be in. That's what gives me my peace.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I always think as well, something I've said a few times on this podcast, when you strip everything else away, no matter what's going on, I always come back to like, this world is not my eternal home.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's all these things that can go on, and we can be like the rock in the brook, and all the craziness is going on. But if
Hmm.
there's nothing else that we can say, what we've got in the fact that this world is not our eternal home solves the problem to everything.
Hmm.
um, because we ultimately know where we're going.
Yeah.
And who we're going to be with.
Mhm.
And it sounds crazy to say that, because that is what Christians believe, right?
Yeah.
But it offers us complete hope. And I
Yeah.
think that it allows us, when the world around us is going crazy and we feel like we've been stripped away from nothing, if we can remember one thing, and that is that this world is temporal,
Mhm.
and everything in it is temporal, and what
Yeah.
we believe in is forever, then
Yeah.
we'll be uplifted and we'll be heartened with that in some way. But thank you for being on here today, Jane. I know that I'm going to get so many messages saying that was the best episode ever. And thank you so much for saying yes. That is 41 minutes, so I'm going to leave it there. I will see you at church on Sunday, but I can't say enough thank yous, and I can't wait to hear this played back. And thank you so much.
Okay. Oh, thank you for letting me talk. Brilliant.
Oh yeah, anytime.
Hi, I hope you enjoyed that podcast. So if you haven't already, please subscribe and leave a review, or even email me with anything you think I could do to make this podcast better. I'm totally open to hearing feedback and ideas. Every single week, I am emailing out a bit of an encouraging newsletter. These are going to change every week. Sometimes it's going to be thoughts that God has put in my heart. Sometimes it's going to just be maybe a series of funny stories or life hacks or things that I find helpful. Either way, it's a great way for us to connect, and I would love to have you on the subscribers list, so make sure to do that. Have a lovely week, praying for God's protection over you as you just go about your business, and I'll see you again. Bye.